What's up friends, I got a brand new video for you today, and today we're looking at the new Fuji X-H2. Now I wasn't invited to Fujikina in New York last month, so my hands-on with the camera is kind of late compared to a few reviewers, but in some ways this is better because it allowed me to set up my own shoots, and since I had a few more days with the camera, I got to do a little bit more things with it than I would have if I was in New York. I can show you some images from a shoot I did a couple days ago, and the images coming off this sensor are stunning. Now this is a weird review for me because I feel like I've already reviewed this camera not that long ago with the X-H2S, and that camera is nearly identical to this. It handles the same, it autofocuses the same, the screen's the same, the EVF's the same. The only thing that's different is that it's missing the S badge on the back. This just says X-H2, the other says X-H2S. Oh, and if you haven't watched any of the content that I shot in X-H2S back last summer, make sure you check that out. I'll put links up here, down there, somewhere in the description. But basically, the X-H2 is just a higher resolution version of the X-H2S, but there are some big differences outside of the resolution that set them apart, and that's why the X-H2S is actually more expensive than this camera. So the X-H2 has a new 40.2 megapixel X-Trans 5 HR sensor, which is currently one of the highest in any APS-C cameras out there, and this is what makes this camera special. It's great for high-end portraiture, commercial photography, product photography. Actually, I'm not even going to put it in a box because it's going to be good for pretty much anything. It's a super versatile camera. They also have a cool feature called Pixel Shift, which is kind of like Sony in the A7R4 that lets you take these crazy high-res images up to 160 megapixels, but you can really only use it for still life because it does kind of like these micro shifts on the sensor when it takes a photo each time, and then it compiles that into a 160 megapixel image. So if anything moves in the image, it's going to be kind of blurry. When taking a look at the body and ergonomics, like I said, it's identical to the X-H2S. It's got that nice deep grip that fits the hand nicely, and around the top you've got that always-on LCD display so you can see your settings at a glance even when the camera's turned off. And the ISO and video record button is near that new redesigned soft shutter button, and then around the front and rear you have the command dials. Basically what I'm trying to say is that it's got the same exact button layout as the X-H2S. And what I do love about this camera though is that larger joystick. It's probably one of my favorite design changes over the other Fuji X cameras that have that little nub for a joystick. My only complaint is that I feel like it's up a little too high for my thumbs and doesn't really naturally sit in the position where my thumb would be. But the bigger joystick is a nice improvement, and I definitely love it for moving the autofocus points around. And then on the opposite side of the camera you have the mode dial, which actually allows you to have up to 7 customizable modes, which is really cool. That's actually the most I've ever seen in any camera, and it's also a locking dial so you don't end up accidentally changing the mode you're in. This camera also has the same EVF and 3-inch vari-angle flip touchscreen just like the X-H2S. It's got really nice weather sealing, so dust and moisture resistance. Oh, and it also has 5-axis in-body stabilization, up to 7 stops of stabilization, which is the same as the X-H2S. And this IBIS is actually way better than anything Fuji's put out to date, other than the X-H2S. It's a lot smoother and less robotic looking. Popping the car door open, you're going to see an option for a CF Express B card slot as well as a UHS-2 card slot, same as the X-H2S. If you want to shoot with the CF Express card, you're going to have faster buffer clearing when you're shooting these bigger files, as well as 8K video. Oh yeah, that's right. This camera can also shoot 8K video up to 30 frames per second, which is insane for a camera at this price point. I know Fuji's kind of marketing this more towards high-res photography, but it's actually a really good, capable hybrid video shooter as well. And I know I'm just sitting here rambling on about specs. Come on, I mean, Fuji packs so much into this camera. Not only does it shoot 8K video, but it can also shoot 10-bit 422 internal ProRes to that CF Express card. And it can also do 12-bit ProRes RAW externally as well, just like the X-H2S. But instead of talking your ear off about video specs, I'm gonna plan on putting out a separate video just covering the video features of this camera. And then in this video, we'll just focus on the photography stuff, so stay tuned for that video. Now, I found the autofocus to perform just as good as the X-H2S, and this is a huge upgrade in the Fuji X system, especially when it comes to eye autofocus. In the past, Fuji cameras that I've used, I couldn't really trust the eye autofocus, and I'd usually just turn it off and use single point autofocus. But in this new system, it's great, and it's going to be really awesome seeing this trickle down into Fuji's lower end of cameras as well. But not only is this more accurate, the actual display of the eye autofocus box isn't as laggy anymore, and it just makes me feel more confident seeing that stick onto the eye. So I pretty much just left it on eye autofocus the whole time, and I trusted it. And maybe some of you have also noticed, but I've been shooting with the 56mm f1.2 Mark II, which is way better at autofocusing now compared to the original, especially paired with this camera. But don't worry, I'll have a whole separate video on that lens, even though you're seeing some of the images from it in this video, but that'll be coming out soon. So from some other reviews I've watched, apparently the sensor isn't as good in low light compared to the X-H2S, and I think that's just because there's more megapixels jammed onto the same size sensor. And so I went out and shot a few low light, high ISO shots, and I'd agree, it's not that amazing in low light compared to some of the newer cameras that are out. I wouldn't really go above ISO 3200, and if you're okay with some noise at ISO 6400 or above, you're still gonna get some nice detailed images, but you're definitely gonna notice a lot more noise. So if you're thinking about buying this camera for low light, make sure you keep that in mind. So as I mentioned, there are two areas that this camera really differs from the X-H2S, and I already covered the resolution. Obviously this has a higher res sensor, but it's also the speed. The sensor isn't quite as fast as the X-H2S. It can still do a respectable 15 frames per second mechanical and 20 frames per second electronic, which is amazing for 40 megapixels, but that's only half of what the X-H2S can do with its crazy stack sensor. And obviously we did some tests to test out the buffer to see what we could get out of 15 frames per second. It was actually pretty good. Shooting uncompressed RAW, I was able to get around 70 shots before the buffer slowed down to 3 frames per second. Again, I was using a V90 SD card, and I also just tried straight up JPEG, and I couldn't get the buffer to cap out. I held it down for like 15 seconds and it never stopped. And obviously, if you're using a CF Express card, it's going to clear the buffer even faster. And that was something that I tried on the X-H2S, but I didn't have a card to test on this. Now obviously this camera has all the same awesome film simulations that make people love Fuji JPEGs, and I got to agree, there's nothing better than looking at the back of this camera and seeing those JPEGs with the film simulations that make them look edited already before you even import them into your computer. And as I said, this is a really capable hybrid camera. It's a really nice high-res photo camera as well as a high-res video camera as well, and it's a reasonable price. Can you believe that this camera's under $2,000 US? That's actually insane, and I think that you can actually pre-order it now. If you're watching this in October 2022, you can pre-order it right now. Put links in the description where to find it. I had a lot of fun shooting with this camera. As I said, I'm gonna have some more videos out that cover the video features of this camera, as well as that new 56mm f1.2 Mark II review. But that's gonna be it for this video. Thanks for watching. I just talked way too much. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you disliked this video, give it a thumbs down twice. Don't forget to hit that notification bell. I'll see you guys in the next one.